Hello, English Composition 2 class. This is Professor Steve Dooner trying to come to you from my house. That's King Mindigus the bear behind me, if you're interested. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about the two stories that are up for discussion this week. The first is A Rose for Emily, which we started just before vacation came. And now that we're back, I want to just finish up some thoughts about it. We talked about its stream of consciousness style, and we talked about the fact that it was like a piece, like the pieces of a puzzle, all disassembled, and you have to actually actively put the pieces of the puzzle together in order to understand what's going on with what Faulkner's story is about. And as you do, slowly you start to unravel this incredible mystery, or you put together this mystery, the pieces of the solution to the mystery, which is why Miss Emily holds on to Homer Barron for so long. And even the dead body of Homer Barron is something that she must love and keep. What made her so possessive, what made her so controlling, what made her so demented as to commit this necrophiliac murder and hold on to her man in such a violent and disturbing way? And why would Faulkner write such a story? That's a great question for all of you to consider. But I think that he does talk about the traditions of the American South, that Miss Emily is a tradition, a duty, and a care. And by the end of the story, we see that the tradition itself, the American tradition of adoration of a false past, is a kind of madness and a love affair with something that's dead ideas. And just like our Confederate statues that are being torn down today, which were once a romance with a dead idea of the South that perhaps should not have been perpetuated. Robert E. Lee, when he lost the Civil War, said, don't build any Confederate statues to me and to us, the Confederates. Let us heal the nation and bring ourselves back together. But that's actually not what happened in the 1930s, about 60 years after the war, 70 years after the war, when the older generation had died out or were dying out and they're living their last moments. The younger generation of the 30s built all those statues, which we are now tearing down again. I think it was the idea that they wanted to hold on to the past, just like Miss Emily. So there's something about history that is similar to the story that Faulkner wrote. Also, just to think very deeply about why the story is called A Rose for Emily. She's a victim in some ways and a villain in others. And she's a victim of her father, and she's a victim of abuse. And she's been made into this Southern belle, this symbol of the Southern society that perhaps she never chose. And that might be why Miss Emily is insane. So I want you to read through that story carefully and finish it up if you haven't. And the next story that we're looking at today is called A Good Man is Hard to Find. And I just want to say a few things to begin the study of this work. A Good Man is Hard to Find is sort of a comic story, but also a horror story. It ends with one of the most disturbing sequences, I think, that we will read in this entire class. And that is an entire family, a father, a mother, a daughter, a son, and a baby, and a grandmother are all shot by a homicidal maniac called the Misfit. He comes as their judgment day and points a gun at them. The climactic line of the story is directed at the grandmother, whose dead body lies in front of the Misfit with her legs crossed and her eyes looking up at the stars and a smile on her face. And the Misfit says she would have been a good woman if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life. And we have to think about what that climactic sentence means, and we have to go back to the original to the origin of all of this. The title, A Good Man is Hard to Find. A Good Man is Hard to Find is a wonderful song sung by Bessie Smith. You can actually listen to the recording. I played you a Bessie Smith song earlier in the semester called Electric Chair Blues. She also sang this song, and it was her great classic, A Good Man is Hard to Find. Nowadays, a good man is hard to find. You always get the other kind. The lyrics of the song goes. In the story, the grandmother is an incredibly selfish, impossibly selfish human being who manipulates her family into doing what she wants. And she's always intent on getting what she wants. As the story progresses, she is resented and hated by her own family members, including her little grandchildren who don't want her to come on a car ride with them. She forces the family to go in the direction she chooses, and that's where they meet the misfits. So it seems to be her energy that's leading them towards this fatal conclusion. As they pass through the story, they pass down the roads of Georgia. They pass the old family plantation, which means that this family was once a slave-owning family of quite high status, and now they become a middle-class family in the modern South. And she looks at the plantation and she sees the old family burial grounds, and she sees 4 or 5 graves. This is ominous foreshadowing, because even as she is driving the family towards the misfit, the 4 or 5 graves match up exactly to who is in the car, to whom is in the car. For instance, there's the father, the mother, the 2 children, John Wesley and June Starr, the baby, and the grandmother. And that's exactly 5 or 6. Sometimes if a baby and mother die together, sometimes you bury the baby with the mother, and sometimes you bury the baby separately. And so the 5 or 6 graves match who is in this car. So I want you to think about this as you read through the story, and think about that very long dialogue at the end between the misfit and the grandmother. This family was always headed towards this fatal conclusion. Another thing I want you to think about is that the family seems to be exaggerated. June Starr is a little bratty version of Shirley Temple. John Wesley is a fat kid with glasses, as the text says, and they both have nasty attitudes. The family, including Bailey, who seems to be a non-entity, in a Hawaiian shirt with blue parrots on it. And the mother, who seems to have no identity at all. She has a face like a cabbage, the text says. This family seems to be much like the cartoons you see in Gary Larson's Far Side, or perhaps The Simpsons or Family Guy. These kind of empty American family that doesn't know where it's headed. And they finally meet the misfit. And the dialogue at the end is something we're going to discuss in the discussion group, but there's a long sequence of back and forth conversation between the grandmother and the misfit, as she keeps saying, "You're a good man. I know you're a good man. You wouldn't shoot a lady." Misfit has a lot of answers here about who he is and what he represents. And so we'll talk about that when we get into the discussion group and the replies. Thank you so much. I hope these notes help. Please remember you have a paper coming up. The rough draft will be due April 6th. And if you want me to make a video on anything to help you, I'll be happy to do that. Bye-bye.